Hi, everyone, and welcome to Arrival Online, Insights that Matter for tours, activities, attractions, events, and experiences, all of the things that travelers do when they get there. I'm Douglas Quinby, co-founder and CEO of Arrival, and I'm really delighted to introduce all of you today to a first-time speaker at an Arrival event, Peter Ross, the co-founder of 829 Studios, a digital marketing agency that works with all sorts of operators and experience providers, and actually other brands outside of travel as well, on marketing, on digital, on search, on pretty much you name it. I've been talking to Peter for a while, one of the smartest guys I know in digital marketing, and so really excited to have him go deep and inside on search and how to do a lot of these free things that are so important, especially for all of us in the tourism industry today, where free really is more important than ever right now. So we really appreciate Peter kind of stepping in and doing this. So I'm going to hand things over to Peter in just a minute. Quickly, I want to run through a few upcoming sessions that we have and also some housekeeping. So tomorrow, Asia time, actually tonight, this is for me, so 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, but tomorrow morning, Shanghai, Singapore time, at 10 a.m., we have an extended session with the leadership team of Trip.com, formerly Ctrip. So, of course, the largest online travel agency in China, one of the largest online travel companies in the world. As we all know, China is out in front with domestic tourism beginning to return. We have an in-depth presentation from them of what they're seeing, what their expectations are, and what can the rest of the world learn from as travel returns in one of its first markets in China. So a really important session. I hope you'll join us for that tonight if you're in the US, or if you're in Asia tomorrow morning. And then, of course, if you're in Europe, this will be recorded and available to you on demand. We also have some important sessions coming up next week, an important session with Granite Insurance on how to manage your insurance program during this crisis and also beyond. What are some things that you should be thinking about? There's potentially new risks around health and safety, so an important session there. And then also a session as well in June on how operators can work with destination marketing organizations. This is something since the beginning of Arrival we've been very focused on. I know there's lots of attention with online travel agencies, and often destination marketing organizations don't pay as much attention as they should to in-destination experience providers. So that's something that we believe very importantly. There's opportunity there for collaboration, and we have a session devoted to that. So you can see the full program of Arrival online here at arrivalevent.com and online. And also you can continue the discussion at our discussion forum at connect.arrival.travel. Now, a couple of quick housekeeping items for today. Please go into chat. Feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from and chat amongst yourselves while Peter is chatting with all of us. If you have a question, please feel free to ask the question anytime. Peter's got a lot to talk about, although I promised him I'm going to be interrupting him frequently with a lot of your questions. So please, fire away. The tougher, the better. And nothing is not allowed. So just let us have it. Also, if you see a question that you really like, just touch the upvote button, and that'll push it to the top of the list, and I will make sure that we get to as many questions as we can. You can also tweet about this event or post on any social platform that you like. You can tag me, you can tag Arrival, use our hashtag Arrival Online. Also, you could probably tag 829 Studios. You can find them as well on social. And I also just want to take a quick moment to thank Arrival's global partners. It's because of these terrific companies that we are able to produce both our events in the real world, the offline world, when we can do that, as well as our online events as well. So a huge thanks to all of those partners. So, okay, that was my preamble, all of the housekeeping. Now I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn my camera off, and I am going to hand things over to Peter. So Peter, please take it away.
Thanks, Douglas. I appreciate it. And hello, everybody. I'm excited to spend some time with you this morning. I'm here in Boston, so still morning. And if you saw that photo of me up before, that was pre-COVID Peter. Now I look like a Brady Bunch character from the 1970s. But normalcy is coming back. And on that point, I have a lot of really, candidly, good information and exciting information to share today. Today, we're going to be talking about SEO. So if you don't know, SEO means search engine optimization. Long story short, it is what you can do to kind of wave your hands at the major search engines to appear higher in the search rankings and thus get a larger piece of the market. And today, what I'm going to try and do, what I am going to do, I'm going to confidently do it, is kind of walk you through a few examples of how you can actually take charge of your own SEO, how you can do a lot of this internally. And instead of getting way into the details and literally going strategy by strategy, what I'm going to try and do is stay a little macro level here and introduce you to major players and services that you can use at very, very little cost, or potentially no cost, that will allow you to really internalize some of these efforts. And so I want to start by sharing my screen. I realize everyone is normally used to slides, but I'm going to try to share a screen here in part because I want to try and show you how I do it, and why this is important. And I guess I'll start by a company that I actually bought a couple years ago, back in 2010. That's in the travel space. And if you're in the US right now, or even if you're not, you're probably well associated with the industry, as it somewhat directly relates to travel. So back in 2010, I bought a summer camp up in New Hampshire, and it was a little bit of trouble. It was very near bankruptcy. Everything was going wrong. The septic was exploding. It had bed bugs. Pretty much everything you could have go wrong went wrong. And so on a song and a dance, I ended up buying it back in 2010. 2011 was my first summer. And I'm just sharing my own data here with you. So you can see my first summer in 2011, I spent $10,000 on marketing. And as the business grew from about $1 million in sales up to about $7 million in sales, you could see every year I ended up spending more and more money on Google Ads, on Facebook, on Instagram. In fact, this is just Google Ads, to a point where in 2017, I was spending about $250,000 just on pay-per-click, just on Google Ads. And thankfully, with the launch of a new website and more of a direction towards SEO, I've essentially been able to drastically reduce my spend and simultaneously increase the number of leads I'm getting. And that is, in a short little, encapsulation, the entire point of kind of what I'm hoping to convey here. When we look analytically at our traffic, most oftentimes, our organic traffic is very much near the top. For me here in my own Google Analytics, you can see my number one source of traffic, this year versus the year when we bought the camp was Google AdWords. But secondly was organic. And if we look at organic specifically, we can start really trying to measure the effect that good SEO can have on our business. So we're now at 36,000 searches organically. We used to be at 7,500. That's about 29,000 searches at about $3, $4 a click. Essentially, because of our SEO efforts, I'm getting about $100,000 worth of free advertising I'd otherwise not have. And that's really the goal here, right? Is trying to make sure that we can, in a time of COVID, when budgets are being slashed left and right, actually be able to get more organic, free awareness that we'd otherwise have to pay for. And when I think about the value of SEO, and I think for my business, for our clients' businesses, what I try and do is I try to come up with our average cost per click when we're spending money on AdWords. So on average, we're spending $3.50 for this summer camp when we're trying to buy traffic through Google AdWords. We had 29,000 additional organic, non-branded people find us as a result of our organic awareness. And so I'm getting about an extra $100,000 in traffic. And that's essentially how, we're able to decrease spend over time. So that's the goal here. The goal is to get more traffic for free. And so let's start by taking a look at what does success look like? What for us is the holy grail here of SEO. And so I just Googled, this is a website we designed back in the day for City Brew Tours. City Brew Tours is shows up right here. So I'm here in Boston, and I'm searching best Boston brewery tours. And this is the holy grail. Not only are they showing up once in the Google My Business section, because the map, it's called Map Pack. The map is also SEO. They're able to show up twice because they're actually indexing two entirely different locations. And then on top of that, as we scroll down, they're number 3 organically. This is spectacular for a couple of reasons, but arguably, primarily so because not only are they appearing once, they're appearing 3 times, they're just taking a larger slice of the pie. And when we think about how people are searching, some people might find structured snippets appearing. Again, this is raftingcolorado.com. A user searches Breckenridge whitewater rafting trips. Not only is Colorado rafting.com appearing down in the search results, but they've also claimed the snippet. So what we're going to be talking about today is how do we get the snippet? How do we appear further up in the map pack? How do we appear organically further up in the search results? And what ultimately is the value of doing that? So I'll scoot along a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about the click-through rate, what it means to be 1, 2, or 3 in the search results. So if we're able to actually get a first position listing on a search result, we get a huge amount of the traffic. In fact, if you're the number 1 result on a search, just like earlier, we were seeing Boston Brew Tours by City Brew Tours, or this first result right down here, you're going to get about 30% of the traffic, and it is going to decline thereafter. So, if you're on the 4th or 5th page of Google, in the 40s or 50s in terms of search results, chances are you're not going to be getting a lot of traffic. And there's a couple other graphs that really demonstrate this. There's less volatility if you're position 5 to 10. Really, if you're above 5, you're going to be taking a disproportionate amount of the traffic away from your competitors. That's why I was kind of calling, City Brew Tours kind of the holy grail of SEO here in a way, because they're able, in the first, several, rankings, they're able to take about half of the first 6 links available to users, which is not too shabby. When we were looking at top...
Hey, Peter, I just want to jump in. I just have a question related to what you just showed on the last couple of slides. So yeah. I remember, so we talk about kind of traffic. So the traffic is dependent on keywords. And I imagine you're going to get to this in what people are searching to. So because what I have in mind is, I remember many years ago in a previous life, I was speaking to a very well-known DMO in Florida.
Yeah.
And we were talking about marketing strategies and about search, and they kept on saying, well, we've crushed it on SEO. We don't need to do this. Because we've got the top position. Anyone who asks for, beaches in this destination. So I'm just going to make it up. Like I'll just say Tampa, like anyone who searches for Tampa beaches, we're number 1 or we're number 2. However, and that's great for that market. But what if I'm just searching for Florida beach vacations, or if I'm searching for just beach vacations in general? Suddenly that destination or that operator goes from being number 1 to number 1,001 or 10,001. So can you just give me some context when you're talking about rank order, like there's different levels or different keywords to approach?
That's exactly right. So the data that I'm kind of like showing here, these sort of like metrics, are ultimately referencing individual keywords. And your businesses rank for lots and lots and lots of keywords. And what we'll get to in a little bit is how we decide strategically where to place our time and money. To jump ahead a little bit, From my perspective, we don't want a shotgun approach. We're not going to win everywhere. SEO consists of 3 different components. It consists of your strategy, your content, and your technical optimization. All 3 of those decide on whether or not you will be able to rank for a particular search. And ultimately, your strategy, will dictate how much value you get for that. For example, if I scoot ahead a little bit and I take a look at Paris. So I'll take a look at, this is a business that does Paris vacation rentals. Each one of these keywords on the left side of the screen represents an individual search that users can make. All slight variations on spending a holiday or a vacation in Paris. The next column is what they're ranking for. The next column is what Google on average would charge you for that particular term, the difficulty and competition of that term, and the number of searches. So to carry this out, does it matter if I'm number 2 for Paris holiday rentals if only 40 people search for it? Wouldn't I rather be number 1 for apartments Paris for rent that gets 4.4 thousand? And so in like 5 minutes or so, we'll get into that kind of nitty gritty. And that when we start talking about how to craft your strategy and figure out kind of where you want to put your time and effort in terms of like conceptualizing, your SEO strategy. Does that answer your question, Douglas?
Yeah, no, that's great. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Yeah, please charge ahead.
You're all good. In the first couple slides, the first couple of like tabs here, I just want to show the impact of being 1, 2, 3, or 4 on Google. It's tremendous. The click-through rate, the CTR, refers to the likelihood of someone clicking on you, just increases dramatically the further up we are on the page, which is obvious. As does the URL structure, right? So if we're using the Paris hotels example or the Tampa Beach example, if our landing page is /Tampa-beach and the keywords on that page are Tampa Beach, we are going to be highly rewarded for consistency within Google. And we'll be rewarded from an SEO perspective if we try and answer questions. One of the great things about Google is that ultimately all SEO is Google trying to provide users with the best possible answer to their question. And that's why so often you see companies trying to answer questions. A great strategy to do ultimately is use a service called Answer the Public, which I was going to get to in a little bit, but I'll pull up right here. Answer the Public is a great way to find what your customers are actually asking about your business. If you're an Italian bike tour company, if you're a rafting company in Colorado, well, let's use the rafting example. It will pull every question users are typing into Google as it relates to rafting or staying in Paris. And all you have to do then is answer those questions. And that's we'll get into that in a little bit when we start talking about content. But ultimately, Google highly rewards answering questions, as does it using power words. What are the best beaches in Tampa? What are the best bike tour companies in Tuscany? There are a lot of ways that we can get an outsized share of the traffic by really looking to our users for an answer. A good rule of thumb I like to use with my clients is we always talk to like sales reps or frontline workers. And we always ask them to record every question they ever get asked, because every question they ever get asked will ultimately become likely a snippet. And I've not done this, so let's actually prove this out. Let's go back to the Tampa Beaches example, and let's type in, what are the best beaches in Tampa, right? And so again, having not done this before, I know this because I know what Google is going to do is they're gonna have these. Have you guys ever seen this? These little boxes. These are structured snippets. So all your competitors here are doing is trying to answer these questions. Now, you may already have these questions. You may be able to think of these questions, but every time one of these is done, it gets stored within Answer the Public. So you don't have to guess at what consumers are searching for or in what volume. It all exists already at your fingertips. And a good rule of thumb is, if you get asked a question 10 times a day, that's a blog post. One of my favorite examples is a safari company who competes heavily with A&K. We'll be talking about them in a few minutes. And one of the questions they always get asked is how to dress on for a safari. And if you haven't heard of Mikado Safaris, they're just an absolutely spectacular provider. And you really wouldn't think about it, but how to dress for a safari ends up generating tens of thousands of searches a year. Silly little blog post on how to dress for a safari. A rafting company called Oars out in California, incredible company. A blog post on what the best outdoor shampoo or environmentally friendly shampoo or soap generates hundreds of thousands of searches. And they're just scenarios where no one has answered this question. They swooped in, they answered it succinctly, nicely, and now they get an outsized benefit. But I'm jumping around now, so I'll veer back on track a little bit.
So Peter, let me just jump in. We have a couple of questions as well from attendees. So I just want to be clear and there's a question from Sarah which ties into this. So she's asking, I run a niche business, cultural luxury travel to Paris, and so it's really how do I find the SEO keywords that matter to me? And so you gave the example of Answer the Public as one example, but really I think the question is, okay, how do I know if I should focus on should I focus on luxury travel to Paris? Should I focus on niche, cultural, which of those words? And how should I look at how popular one word is versus versus another? Should I go for maybe the third, and I can get a better SEO ranking if I go for a less popular word, or should I really go for it with the most popular word? How do I balance all that out?
It's like you're reading my mind, Douglas. Like you're reading my mind. So let's imagine your constituent there. Let's imagine that you're trying to compete with a Paris Perfect or one of these type companies, right? And that is a good introduction of how you can do this in-house. Because if you haven't already seen, I'm on a website called SpyFu. And I'm going to share this with as a handout afterwards. All the resources I'm talking about right now, I've put into a handout at the end where you can get lessons and information. So you don't have to write all this down. It's all in the handout. But SpyFu, as well as Moz, as well as SEMrush, which we'll talk about, is a spectacular way to kind of take apart your competitors. Here's what I would say. As an agency that does this for a living, I never start from scratch, right? I'm not that arrogant. Start with what is working for your competitors. And so imagine if we're competing with Paris Perfect, what would we do? Well, we would start by figuring out, all right, how much traffic do they get from SEO on a given month? Remember how we were talking about the value of SEO? Here is a company that is ranking for 4,375 keywords, that is garnering 577,000 in free traffic a month. Wow. How much are they spending? Do they need to, right? But when we drill down a little bit, we can see some volatility here, right? They've made it to the first page for 100 keywords, but they've fallen off of the first page for 131. So if I were your member there, your questioner, I would start by saying, all right, what are the most valuable keywords to Paris Perfect? Where are they getting the most value in terms of traffic? And then I would look at the difficulty rating, right? And I would decide whether or not this is something I can compete on. For example, if I find a very low difficulty rating that syncs with my business, I may try to push towards that particular keyword over another. And if we use a few keywords as examples, so I'm just scrolling through here through their keywords. If we just pick one of them, let's call it vacation rental in Paris. What SpyFu will do for you is it will show you how many people are searching that per month, other similar keywords that you might want to consider, how much of it is being cannibalized by paid traffic, and ultimately the difficulty. So you can put together a spreadsheet of all of your competitors, what they're ranking for, and hopefully what you're going to find, and this is the secret, is to find gaps in their armor. Find keywords that have high volume and low competition, And that's where you focus. You don't want to go after the ones that have high competition and high traffic all the time, because they'll take you years to get there. You want to start picking away at the low-hanging fruit. And spending an hour or two on SpyFu will show you all of that. My favorite thing on SpyFu is what they call a combat analysis. And so here I've taken Paris Perfect and I've taken vacationinparis.com, 2 different companies. And what this graph is showing us is the organic keyword universe for both companies. And so let's imagine if I was Vacation in Paris for a moment. Well, let's just say I was Paris Perfect. What I would do is I'd want to defend the 305 keywords that my competitor is actively cannibalizing and competing on me with. And then I would absolutely want to go after their 44 unique keywords and take them apart. So for example, if I want these 305 keywords, these are the 305 keywords that we're actively competing on. And look at this, by the way, we just found, this is an amazing example of potentially a piece of low-hanging fruit right away. Weekly apartment rentals, 2.4 thousand searches, a high difficulty rating, but a very low CPC rating, which generally assumes low competition, right? Because Google Ads is just a auction service. We might want to focus there.
Oh, and Peter, when you say CPC, that's cost per click, right? So when it's a lower, that means it's a more cost-effective term to bid on, correct?
Exactly right. So if we wanted to take a look at all the keywords that we're overlapping with and start with the lowest hanging fruit, penthouses for rent in Paris would be first. No one is really competing on it because it's a search that doesn't have a lot of value. But if you're a luxury provider in Paris, you want the people who are going to spend, $10,000, $20,000 a month. We have a client out in the Hamptons right now who's renting homes in the Hamptons, and we're renting for $70,000 a month in the Hamptons this summer. Guess what? We're not screaming to the rooftop for New York apartment rentals. We're being super surgical because the buyer universe that we're looking for is so small. Anyway, Douglas, does that answer your question?
No, this is great, and I have just a couple of follow-ups from some that have come in, but also, so I want to go back to the questions, those question snippets that you brought up.
Yeah.
So there's a question from Juan here where he's asking, how do those questions come in? I presume those are just based on search. So people are entering those in search. And okay. Yeah. So you also made a really great point which I never thought of, which is fantastic, which is, so really in terms of creating content like blog posts that will rank high in SEO, you don't need to be creative or come up with brilliant ideas or be a great. You just look here, like what are people searching for? And those are the top questions. And then you go there and then you write a blog post which says, how do you find the best beaches in Tampa? Or how do you find the best food tours in Toulouse or wherever it is?
And let's take a look at the competition here, right? The competition here are all people who are just, here is renttampabay.com, right? Who is answering a question, how close is Tampa to the beach, right? So you don't have to be National Geographic or TripAdvisor.com to answer these questions. It's pretty much whoever does it first, whoever gets there first with a great answer is given this. Exactly right. And then in terms of another question, SpyFu has a free service, but otherwise pretty much all the services I'm going to show you today, everything I'm going to show you is 20 to maybe $70 a month. Everything is under $100 a month, if not free.
Okay, super. So a couple of other kind of questions here. So there was one at the top, which actually Nick has been very patient, I think waiting for a while, just asking about, trademarking your brand name so that competitors or online travel agencies can't bid. Any thoughts on that? That's a big contentious issue in our industry as well as in hotels and other industries.
Yeah, it doesn't work, unfortunately. So, however, you can really make them pay. Like you can really hurt them if you want to. So ultimately Google has punted on this idea. I think what you're referring to is, this happens all the time with hoteliers. You'll Google the name for a hotel, and I'll Google one of my favorites. So let's see if I can just pull them up real quick. Give me a second here. So Harbor View Hotel. And we may not see this right now because all of the the major advertisers are down, but oftentimes you Google the name of a hotel and you get like 3 ads for OTAs, right? And that has always irked me. Here's the good news for you, Nick. the reason why there's two types of, there are multiple types. The two main types of Google ad campaigns are branded and non-branded search. The same is true for SEO. Branded search is your trademark, your name, your hotel, your trip company. Unbranded search is a search that does not necessarily relate. What you can do is ultimately buy your name at a fraction of what these OTAs can buy it at, which is the reason why you see so many hotels and travel companies buying their own name. Because not only can you add a bunch of extensions under your name, but you can do so for, I'm going to exaggerate here, but probably not. You can do so at maybe a 1/10, an 1/8 of what it would still cost TripAdvisor. So if you're used to paying TripAdvisor, X number of percent, it's a no-brainer. Generally, the ROAS, the ROAS, or the return on advertising spend for a branded paid search campaign in the travel industry, specific to hotels, I literally know this, I did this morning, ranges between 10 and 12x. So it's a no-brainer. Can you stop them? You can't. But you can absolutely take up more air than you might otherwise be to discourage that from happening.
Okay. There's another question here. This is from Lucas Dalmay. He's asking, so he says, he's not very familiar with all this stuff. And I have to admit too, I'm not, I don't handle our SEO, and I'm a little overwhelmed, and I'm working hard to keep up with everything here. But he says, okay, so look, once we've identified the best keywords for our business, how do we use them at their best? Should we add them to our content, to our meta descriptions? Yeah. Technically, what do I do?
Yeah, so great question. So we've logged onto SpyFu or Moz or SEMrush. We'll get to those in 2 moments. And you've identified, there's a keyword universe out there. Yeah, maybe there's a couple questions you want to answer. The brilliant thing here is you don't have to worry about keywords anymore. The idea of metadata or inserting keywords into metadata, that was a fallacy as of 5 years ago, 7 years ago. Metadata isn't even used in search results. So, most plainly what you do is you list all of the questions that customers have for you, and you answer each one of them in a blog format. That's all you have to do. And the truth is, just answer it as you would. Don't give any thought to SEO. In fact, Google now wants to reward authenticity, and it's punishing people who are trying to game the system. So identify every question that gets asked, identify your keywords, and just write really nice blog posts. For me, my recommendation would be to keep them under 800 words, put them in a list format, if possible. So the 5 things to think about when choosing an Italian bike tour company, choosing a hotel, and do your best to use headers. Help Google explain what you're doing. A great example of this, if I may, is the following. Here is, if I just search, this is a website that we designed, Holland Photography Spots. So you can see 10 photography spots in Holland. They own the top half of the search result. And if we click over to the website, what we'll see is this is just a blog post, 10 best photography spots in Holland, 10 best photography spots in Holland. And we scroll down and they have broken it up into little list formats. So just do what you'd normally do. And honestly, if you're just being genuine and authentic and helping to answer people and assuming your website's not, broken, which we'll get to in 2 seconds, you'll be fine.
Peter's one kind of follow-up question. You were talking about kind of buying your own name, or I think your name extension. So Sarah was just asking for some clarification. What exactly are you talking about there?
Yeah, of course. If you're using Google Ads, there is an opportunity for you to spend money for your own name. If you have a name that is ubiquitous, for example, Bike Trips Italy, if that's the name of your company, the name of your company is overlapping with just general interest. And it may behoove you to buy your own name to make sure people can actually find you. And when they don't Google Bike Trips Italy, they find a competitor. If you're a company that deals with OTAs, they have often will buy your own company name in an attempt to subvert your own traffic to their network to capture the booking, thus to collect a fee. So defending yourself through Google Ads is candidly everything. It's absolutely something you should consider, if only so that you do not have your traffic taken accidentally or intentionally. And there's something called a Conquest Campaign. If you guys are running Google Ads campaigns, I'm sure you've considered it. We run them. We'll sit down with a client and we'll say, hey, what are your 10 biggest competitors? Great. Where do their clients come from? Oh, they come from New York? We'll buy their name. We'll buy your competitor's name and then redirect the traffic to your site. So you can be on the offensive, you can be on the defensive, but it's probably not good to do nothing.
I'm just going to ask one more question, and I'm going to let you get back to it for a little while, but we will come back to questions for sure. We'll get to as many as we can. But this is an interesting one from Jessica Hammer. She's saying, I run a food tour in Toulouse, France. I'm the only speaking food tour here, so I have no obvious direct competitors. Yeah. But I think, this is an interesting question because, one of the interesting things about our industry is, half of the small operators were founded in the past 5 years, and really, like, they're creating entirely new experiences. Things like, yoga hiking experiences in Asheville. I think Namaste in Nature, a great little company. Yeah. I would imagine, not 10 yoga hiking companies in Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah. So in that case, like, how should I think about, keywords and SEO kind of competition versus more, generic, like a walking tour of Nashville or something more general?
Great question. What you're doing, congratulations. You're the epitome of blue ocean strategy, which is my favorite Harvard Business School book. If you get a second, it is absolutely incredible. Basically, what it says is don't compete with your competition. Create your own market. The downside to that is ultimately, users may not know to look for you, right? And in that case, you have to go after more broad searches. You have to go after things to do around me. You need to start being a little bit more innovative because there isn't a market that exists. You have to create one. And one of the best things to do is to look for more generalized searches and start appearing. Also, PR is especially good if you're looking to build a new niche. One of my favorite clients, and just incredible people. There's a company called Tracks and Trails in out west, and they don't have any competition, right? They're in your same boat. You rent an RV, and then they plan your entire vacation for you. So you're still paying $4,000 or $5,000 for one of these trips. This was one I was hoping to go on before COVID, actually this summer. And their problem is, how do you advertise a company that doesn't have a competitor, that doesn't have a market? And their answer is ultimately just to try and take as much organic market share as possible. But I'm going to put a pin in that if I can, because we're running a little short on time, and I'd love to get to 2 or 3 other services at this point, super superficially. So I said earlier that SEO consists of 3 main thoughts: strategy. That's what we're doing on SpyFu. Content, that's what we were looking at Answer the Public, looking for, to answer our prospective clients' questions. And the last one, which we haven't really talked about yet, is technical. So the one downside of SEO, and the one thing that you have to be hyper aware of, is that Google ultimately will ding you, or sometimes called a Google slap, if your website is not up to snuff. For example, if you're not mobile friendly, if it's not fast, if it's not ADA compliant, they will ding you. And there are a couple of free services that you can do through Google that will tell you whether or not this is true. The first is Google Page Speed. And so you can just go to Google Page Speed, right? And plug in your website, and it will tell you out of 100 what you score, and it will independently list all of the issues it is seeing with your website. So again, you don't have to fix this necessarily. Send this to your dev team, but you want to make sure, we had a travel client who wrote 3 or 4 blog posts a year for years, and none of it listed because their website was so poorly rated. It loaded so poorly, it didn't have a mobile version. And the minute it was redesigned, it shot up. Another great service, again, free, GT Metrics. Not only does it pull in Google, but it uses a variety of other tools as well to independently list issues with your site. So again, super easy. GT Metrics, Google Page Speed, pop in your site, list the errors, and then send the results to whoever you're paying to maintain your website and say, hey, if I'm paying you for this, make sure that our website is compliant. That's something to think about. I'm gonna go back a little bit as well. Google Search Console is the other technical resource to consider. This is a tool from Google that is designed to tell you if there are issues indexing and promoting your site. Super easy. Make sure that you have access to Google Search Console. Log in once every 3 months and just make sure there are no errors. Whoever's doing more technical SEO for you can go crazy. They can look at mobile usability. They can look at crawl stats. They can go nuts with it. But for the purposes of today's conversation, just log in and make sure there are no errors. What do errors look like? They're big and red, and Google's yelling at you. So really easy. Google Search Console, Google Page Speed, GT metrics. Just make sure that technically your site is ready to perform. Otherwise, you're gonna have some issues right out the gate. And if we're looking at education, I mentioned this earlier. I'm not going to be able to get to Moz and SEMrush in today's session, unfortunately. We just won't have the time to walk through it. But specifically Moz, moz.com, forget me. They have free resources that are hands down the best you can find online. They have an SEO learning center. They have a beginner's guide to SEO. They have such spectacular content that will walk you through all of this, and specifically how to do it. It really is a spectacular service. And if you get to the point where you want to use it as your home base for traffic, for website optimization, this is an interesting example of what this is a client here. You're going to be able to track over time your positioning on the keywords that you value compared to your competitors. So you can see here, right here, we're tracking in purple is Abercrombie and Kent. And so you can see as it relates to best and luxury vacations, going back to January of 18, they're purple. They have declined probably drastically by 50%. They've given up 50% of their search traffic and visibility in the last year or two. And what you're able to do down the road is, so here is you is us here, is you're able to see keyword by keyword, rank by rank in the last year or two, how you've grown compared to your competitors. So here we have A&K in decline. We have Roar Africa in steep decline. Tauk is nowhere on the top pages for Google. And you have, again, hopefully yourself, growing and gaining. I love Moz because it's cheap. You can plug in all the keywords that have value to you. You can plug in all of your competitors, and you can really keep track of both your own performance as well as theirs. And speaking of COVID, I mean, the decline is there is so much opportunity right now in this market. It is genuinely insane. There has been more volatility in SEO in the last, I would say 30, 60 days than there has been in the last few years. When you have competitors like A&K losing visibility on particular search terms, like I have genuinely never seen it. And the SERP winners, the people who are gaining when it comes to search engine results page, that's what SERP stands for. Travel, I know it's down there at the bottom, I know it's small, but we're one of the winners here. And if you're looking for some good news on when your particular sector or industry is going to come back, I would have you take some time and play around with Google Trends. What Google Trends does is shows us what customers are really searching for right now. So in blue, we have restaurant reservations. In red, we have takeout. In COVID, takeout is through the roof. Zoom, like we're on today, through the roof. When we look at grocery delivery, it hit a peak, and then people are starting to go back outside. It's declining. When we look at airlines, ironically, still in decline, unfortunately. But there are some glimmers of hope. When you start looking for, if you're a hotelier, if you're a tour operator, if I'm looking at Miami hotels, interest in Miami hotels was at an all-time low last month. It is beginning to, even incrementally, come back. We're seeing that on tours. We're seeing that on trips. The last week or two has been, while small, the most movement we've seen in several weeks, if not months. And so this might also be, again, a free tool, just Google Trends, a nice way for you to feel what is going on. And you know what? If you want to look at Taylor Swift versus Kim Kardashian, if that's your world, have at it. All right, Douglas, it's 11:45. If you can't think about Taylor Swift, what are we doing at the end of the day, right?
Well, fantastic. I was not expecting Taylor Swift or Kim Kardashian on the agenda. So let me do this. I'm gonna, since we'll go into kind of extended Q&A, I'm going to put my camera back on here. Okay, great. So, but yeah, please do. Yeah, keep your screen up, because I mean, I love how as you're responding to questions, you're jumping around and pulling in examples. So if you would, I'm loving that. So if I'm loving it, I'm hoping some of our attendees will. So why don't you keep your screen up if you want to?
Right.
So first, this is a great question from Johan de Klerk. It also, I think, maybe, it puts you on the spot maybe a little bit, because you're obviously, 829 Studios, you're a vendor. So your clients are tour, activity, attraction, and other clients. But I mean, I think basically he's asking, how do you, as an operator, how do you choose a marketing agency vendor? And I would even ask as well, when do you know? I'm going to break it down into two parts. So when do you know you can do this yourself, and when do you need to really get some third party help? And then the second question would be, okay, then how do you evaluate those vendors?
Okay, so in terms of doing it yourself, pretty much everything I listed today, with 5 or 10 hours of education, you can do. Go on Moz, watch some videos. In my handout, I have a bunch of my favorite educational videos if you really want to get technical. As an owner or as a marketing director, I think you can write all the content, you can figure out what it is that you want to target, and this is what I do. So this is what I use as an example here. So what I do with our clients is I build out all of the different searches we want to rank for. I figure out all of the, topics. I build out blog dashboards. This is me being a little insane, but I literally, if you love Excel, or you don't have to be Excel, it can be a Word doc. If you can build out all your keyword matrices, you can do a lot of this on your own. It doesn't have to be technical. I think the one thing that you are going to need to have, and by the way, guys, if you need any of this, I mean, truly, don't use me. This is absolutely not a solicitation, sir. There are enough good agencies and I can refer them. There are a lot of good people out there. But if you want my templates and my models and my frameworks, I'd be happy to either send them to Douglas or in the future send more resources. I'm happy to share my frameworks with you. The reason why I was smiling earlier, you hit on my number one pet peeve with marketing agencies. So let's be clear on how we make money, agencies. And let's look at the mistakes. Hoteliers specifically are arguably the most abused market I have ever found when it comes to ad spend. So, and why does that happen? It's because tour operators, but particularly hoteliers and OTAs, and this may sound familiar, they give their advertising budgets to agencies. And the agencies come back and say, oh, we got you 100 million impressions. You have to own your data. It needs to be your Google AdWords account that people are using. It needs to be your display account. The biggest mistake is to lose direct access to the spend. In other words, if you're hiring a company to advertise on Facebook, to advertise on AdWords, to do display, to do programmatic, the examples are outrageous. I have a client in New York, and it's just a friend. It's a private equity company that invested in a tour operator, and they're using a New York firm. And in 5 minutes, I could tell that there was a theft, because I went to their Google Analytics. I saw that this company was spending $300,000 a year on display and search. And I went to the Google Analytics and I saw 20,000 Google ad clicks a year. And so unless they're paying $15 a click, someone's pocketing that money. And in that case, they were pocketing about 70 or 80% of the ad spend, and then only spending a small portion. So make sure you own your account. Make sure that you're month to month. One of the other biggest mistakes in choosing an agency is never let anyone sign you on for an annual contract. It has to be month to month, and they better earn it every month. If they don't, they're to the curb. It can't be a scenario where they own your website, or they have your analytics account, or they have your Google Tag Manager. So I guess just think of the worst and make sure that you own everything, because in that scenario, then you truly can be partners. And then last but not least, you can tell this really grinds my gears. If it didn't happen in Google Analytics, it didn't happen. Don't let them send you a PDF report. Don't let them talk about clicks and impressions. You want to see direct attribution. If I look at show you as a quick example here, real quick. What I love to do, and Douglas, I'm guessing I still have you, even though I heard a beep, right?
Yep, you're here, and I'm here.
All right. What I love to do, so for me, if I just took a look at my registration, so this is my summer camp, right? So if I just take a look at my registrations, right? So if I look at my registrations from January through August, my individual registrations, I'm able to see my multi-touch attribution model. And I shared this with you. If you can't go in and see directly, each one of these registrations is $4,000 or $5,000. If you're not able to see the actual purchase path of your users, so someone clicked on a paid search ad, they came back organically, they came back direct 3 times and then purchased. If you don't have transparency to be able to judge the ROI of your investment, especially now, I think you need to be taking a break. And then last but not least, and I promise I'll hush up, they should all be taking a haircut right now. So they should all be taking dramatically less money in this environment. And as a show of good faith, they should be continuing on. You should know that many agencies, not just myself, have either waived months of management fees or have discounted fees. So just like you would in renegotiating your rent or anything else, if they're really a partner with you, they need to really help you out in the next 3 to 6 months to help you get through this. Whew. All right. I'll stop.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. But that's great. I mean, so basically my takeaway is if you do decide you need to outsource it and you need that support, you still, you can't give up ownership, and you need to, and watch every dollar that's spent, for sure. So, next question. This is from Elizabetta Zanin. She's asking, with regard to the blog, should our answers be inside the website, or is it better to keep it separated and have links to the website? So I guess, should the blog be integrated with the website, or should there be a separate URL?
Yeah, such a great question. Back in the day, I'd say 5 or 7 years ago, there was a trend back with like Tumblr and Blogger and HubSpot to have like blog.your website. That's done. So it should just be, your URL /blog / the URL. Keep everything under one domain, please. That's key.
Got it. And going back to the question snippets in Google, Anna's asking one blog per question.
Yes, in some cases, multiple blogs per question. You remember how we were looking at Amherst Perfect, and there were like 50 variations of one keyword? Those can matter. So let's just imagine that you're a rafting company in Colorado. Best rafting trips in Colorado, best family rafting trips in Colorado, best bachelorette rafting trips in Colorado, things to do. So feel free to, as long as you're not duplicating content, as long as you can genuinely produce quality content that is truly unique, feel free to produce additional pages.
Great question here from Chris Torres. And this is something that our industry, all of travel is talking about a lot. It's local and domestic is coming back first, and lots of big questions still about international. Certainly, long haul, even people getting on airplanes, as you showed from your Google Trends slide before. So, what are your thoughts on kind of local versus domestic search, and how should operators be thinking about, local? I want to get locals in the door. I got to reach locals. Does that change my SEO strategy? And also, kind of for domestic and regional or kind of local drive markets, how should I be thinking about that as well?
More good news here in Google Trends, right? More really good news in Google Trends here. So you can see when we were all cooped up in COVID, again, I'm just picking terms here, domestic travel, international travel, right? You can see we're all at home, with our families and our dogs, and we're like, we're going to have to stay domestic, right? And there's huge interest for a period of time in domestic travel. And again, each of your markets will be different, but if we go back to the last 90 days, you can see as COVID took hold, a huge interest in domestic travel, and then international traffic slid. You can also see variations state by state. There are certain states highlighted in red that are still more interested in domestic travel than international travel right now. I will say, however, if you look in the last 30 days, while not back by any means, it is inching. If you trust the data, so we have a bunch of international travel clients, and I'm not going to disclose what their booking rates are, but it is not what it was last year over year, But I hope that you're seeing the same thing, which is every week it's getting better. They may not be booking for 2020. They may be pushing out to 2021, but it's coming back based on the data that we can see today.
Oh, well, that is really encouraging.
And look at you can look at what the terms are as well. You can look at what people are searching. So anyway, sorry, all yours.
No, that's great. So here's a really interesting question from Louise, and I think in this case, I think she's asking specifically, if you've expanded, if you have multiple brands, or maybe you've got different sites for different markets. I think also, especially too, as an operator, we have many operators that may be serving multiple, markets, and they're operating in different languages.
Yeah.
So how do we think about, different kind of website structure? How many websites should we have, and how does that link into an integrated SEO strategy? What's your advice there?
It's a great question. So I would keep it all on one URL. I really would. I think for a variety of reasons. Gone are the days of us having 50 websites. One unique domain for every language. Within, not to get too technical here, but within Google's, if you go to develop, if you just Google, Google structured data, within Google's, your developer will know this. There are ways to tell Google, hey, this is the section of my website that's in Spanish. This is in English. This is, in French. There are ways to do that technically. It's not the end of the world. I would keep it all on one domain if possible. And we just redesigned a portion of REI's website. And I would look at REI, how REI handles language translation. I would look at, I go to the major websites, and what you'll see, if you use a free tool called Built With, free tool, goes in Google Chrome, you're actually oftentimes going to find their language translation software that they're using on I think this is a Sitecore website, I'm guessing, but you'll often find it within their tool set or built into the schema. In your purposes, if you're a food and wine tour company in Europe, and you're serving both the European and the US market, I would probably have one. I would likely have one domain. If nothing else, it gets exceptionally expensive to maintain two independent websites, and the gains that were once there are no longer there anymore. I'll give you one example. If I can spell Tuscany properly, if I Google Tuscany bike tours, it's one of my favorite examples. One of the things you'll notice right now, does anyone see ads? No ads. This is, Loire Valley, Tuscany, hands down one of the most expensive ads, period. $15 a click, $12 a click, very, very high, none, which I find ironic, right? Because, if they're booking a tour, they're going to book a tour. And because there's no one spending money right now, it's probably so much cheaper, $1 a click, $2 a click. If you have the capital, it has never been a better time to invest. Think about how cheap this is right now, as long as people are looking out to 2021. So I won't call out the client here. They're an old client of ours. I won't call them out. But on this first page of Google, there are separate websites that are all the same company. So on the first page of Google that I'm just looking at, there are 3 separate websites that are in fact the same client, who are triple and double dipping because the cost for traffic was so high. But it's very hard to back into that today. It's, unless you had that strategy from 10 or 15 years ago, it's very hard to duplicate it now in today's environment, unfortunately.
So, Peter, we're almost at the top of the hour. Do you have a few extra minutes to go over? Because we have a number of questions I'd like to get to. Do you have another 5 or maybe 10 minutes?
Douglas, I'm all yours. I mean, I have no one else here, so I'm all yours.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Well, so for those of you who do have to go, I know we're at the top of the hour. This is being recorded. We're going to post it at Arival Online. We try to get it up within 24 hours. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, so it should be up by tomorrow. But if not, certainly over the weekend or depending upon where you are after the Monday holiday, so early next week. So here's a question from Dennis, which is actually great. When I think of SEO, I think links. That's been kind of drilled into me. I mean, is links still matter?
So SEO involves. And so as an agency owner, I try not to, I did not have an SEO department until like 2.5 years ago. I refused. And the reason why I refused is because it was, you're buying a bunch of backlinks, you're buying off of Russian servers, there's a bunch of black hat strategy, keyword stuffing. I felt like I didn't even want to touch it. Like I felt like it was, I don't know. I like to, as a business owner, and like you, I like to be able to actually know what I'm going to get and not have to always worry about Google coming to destroy me. Back in the day, backlinks were a big thing, and they still are. Remember, we don't know what Google's search algorithm is. We don't know what they're using. We can glean from making our own changes, and there are great resources like Search Engine Journal. My thought with backlinks, don't buy them. Don't hire an agent. This is what agencies do. They'll hire, right? I don't offer this, but you'll literally pay, and they'll just literally call up websites or email websites being like, hey, will you link to us? The ROI on that is so horrible. Forget it. What is the altruistic and ultimately effective thing to do now is just be yourself. As tour operators, as you're naturally want to explain and share your culture and experiences, just do that online. Answer their questions, come up with great content, and the rest will flow. Don't give backlinks a second thought. Whereas if you're REI or Black & Decker, if you're a $100 million company, then perhaps you throw a little bit. But the only thing you do is make sure that you don't have what's called malicious backlinks. If you end up using Moz or SEMrush or SpyFu, they'll show this to you, right? They'll show you all of your competitors' backlinks. Not to be cheeky about it, the reward for the investment just isn't there as much anymore. I'm sure you'll find some contrary advice from like nitpicky SEOers. Of course, if the US government and Stanford University and the New York Times start linking to you every day, of course it would help. But for the time being, I would just ignore it. They're bigger fish to fry.
Here's a question from Ediana Brahm. If you have to choose the paid version between Moz or SpyFu, which one do you prefer?
So if you're a nerd like me, I would actually probably choose SEMrush, which is this service. It's super technical. It rips apart your competition. If you're highly technical, it's SEMrush. If it's very basic and this isn't going to be something that you're using that often, maybe you're spending an hour or two a month on this stuff, it's SpyFu. My personal preference for most everybody is Moz, if only because it has the best resources available, hands down. I'm scratching the surface here, and it's Moz. For example, if we're looking at,
Peter, just because I think we have a lot of operators that are small businesses, in many cases solo practitioners or entrepreneurs, and so while they might aspire to be SEO nerds like you, kind of sounds like at a starting place, it should be Moz.
It really should be. And the beauty of it is, imagine if you're a local business, so you're attracting locally. They just have a checklist for you here. All of the fundamentals. Just read each one of these articles, and they will tell you literally one by one what to do, how to update your listing information, what to consider. Just keep reading these articles, and one by one, you'll be able to take care of 80 or 90% of it. The super exciting part about this is I guarantee the vast majority of your competitors aren't doing this because it takes time, it takes effort. You have to learn something you're not fluent with. So even small little movements towards this can have larger reactions.
Okay. We'll just do a couple of more questions. So this from Luis asking, just going back to the issue of purchasing the ad with your company name. Is it really important for you to, are you really obliged to do this? Should you be doing this?
You should not be doing it if, when you search for your name, almost everyone's ads are off right now. So it's hard to use today as one of my, hands down, what I consider the best African safari company, Mikado Safaris. I mean, just incredible people. Here I am, I'm searching Mikado Safaris. They come up first, but they also come up with an ad on top still today. Why? Because there were competitors who were just stealing their traffic. And we found that out, and now we're protecting ourselves by buying the ad. If you're in a scenario where you've never had a competitor cannibalize you, if you're in a scenario where you've never had a conquest campaign against you, where you've never had an OTA trying to shave off bookings, by all means, ignore it. Don't do it. But those strategies are really effective. And so it might, as much as I hate to say it, you might want to consider it.
Okay. And I think also kind of related to this, and I've always wondered this, does Google favor you if you do spend money with them? Like, what if my SEO is off the charts, but I'm just a small entrepreneur and I'm not paying for clicks? Are they still going to ding me because my competitor who's got a lousy website is spending more money on ads? There's mixed reviews. This is not black and white. My opinion is no. If we go back to the Paris Perfect example, you have Airbnb spending millions. You have Paris Perfect not. Again, this is all publicly information. I'm not sharing anything I shouldn't be. And yet Paris Perfect is pulling in $500,000 worth of free SEO traffic every month. I don't believe that's the case. And I have seen many, many examples of that not being the case. In some cases, in fact, if you have a lot of SEO, it actually makes your Google ads cheaper. And I'll tell you why. The only reason why you'd have lots of traffic from Google is that they trust you. You have a quality score. Your quality score determines how much you pay in part for Google AdWords. So for example, if I'm an untrusted brand new operator and I'm up against an operator who's well established, who Google knows, who Google sends traffic to, I will be at such a disadvantage buying traffic against them. I'll give you a quick little mathematical example. If Google knows that, Douglas, if you're advertising, users will click 50% of the time on one of your ads, but only 25% of the time on my ads. And if we're both up there against each other, trying to get to the top spot for ads, if you're bidding $1 and I'm bidding $2, they will likely still give you the top placement or placement as an ad because they know you're so much more likely to get a click, your click-through rate. And as such, there are very many examples where you'll look at the ads for safaris in Africa, and one operator might be spending $8, one might be spending $4, and one might be spending $2. The difference here is ultimately the person managing your Google ads has to be good, but also your website has to be trusted. Your landing pages need to be optimized. It needs to load really quick. If it isn't, they're going to charge you more. They call it's a slap. They're trying to get all of us to comply with building the best websites that are fast and answer questions. And those that don't, those that have lower quality scores, they're going to have to pay more. And people don't really realize that. You may have a $100,000 budget, and I may have a $100,000 budget, but you'd be able to get twice as much for your money than me based on your website and how your campaigns. I have a whole session on Google Ads on how to optimize that, but that's kind of the big takeaway. And people don't really think about it. They think the cost per click is equal, but it really isn't. It really genuinely isn't. And in theory, I guess if they're if they may end up in a sense favoring that less expensive ad, but that ad is going to generate more clicks, it would actually make Google more money than the less well-performing, higher priced ad, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So exactly right. And when you use Moz or SEMrush or SpyFu, you're going to get the average cost per click. If you're doing what you should be doing, you could really, sometimes small budgets dramatically outperform large budgets because of the operator on the paid search account or because of the website. Whereas there are often times when people have to pay through the nose to build awareness. If we were starting a company right now, a brand new company, we'd be at a sizable disadvantage. Even more reason to invest in SEO because our SEO, technically, from a content perspective, from a page rank perspective, from a quality score perspective, all of those are terms you'll find in Moz. Those ultimately influence not just SEO, but our ads as well.
So we're 10 minutes after the hour. We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to wrap this up. We are going to do, there's so many questions here, and if Peter, if you would agree to this, we're going to take all of these questions, we're going to load them into our online discussion forum, And maybe we could invite you or one of your colleagues to join and simply take 10 or 15 minutes and go through and address some of these questions. So you can join all of us at connect at connect.arrival.travel. Also, I want to remind everyone, all of these resources and links, and I think many more that Peter hasn't touched on, they're available in the handout, but you can all download in the handout section to the right. So just the last question here, and this I'll pull the one from Amy Grimes. I know she's been waiting patiently for this, which is an interesting question. Is she's doing a lot herself. She's analyzing her competitors, but she's also new. She's not technical. So what are the main technical issues I should check for? So I think that could be an open and broad-based question, but like what should you be looking for on your website from a structure standpoint, from a technical standpoint? What does she need to be thinking about?
Great question. So Amy, whether or not you're technical, I would just go to Google Page Speed. I'd go to GT Metrics. I go to these third-party services that help evaluate our websites, because they're good. If you don't know what's wrong and you're seeing yourself decline and you believe it could be technical, then I'd pull these up, and all you need to know is your marketing company, your SEO company, your dev company. This just needs to be an 80 or 90%. That's all it is, right? You just need to get it up so it's not an F. So from a technical perspective, that's what you have to do. If you're still seeing yourself decline, but technically you're sound, then that means that your competitors are encroaching. That Google ultimately is viewing their sites as more reputable, as providing better information and content to users when compared to your own. And the solution there might be additional content. Oftentimes it's a website redesign, unfortunately. But it depends. I mean, I know we're running short on time. I mean, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to, and to really answer your question, unfortunately, I'd have to spend like 10 minutes with you and just kind of walk you through it, which today is not obviously the format for that, but feel free to reach out. It's a holiday weekend and I'm quarantined. So I'm here, but it would be hard for me to answer that without actually seeing your setup.
And you've got nothing better to do than to analyze websites for tour operators, right?
So I genuinely don't. So my wife is a U.S. attorney, and she gets to investigate all these corporations and whatnot, and do all this fun stuff undercover. And this is me doing my own version, even though it's much less cool than that. This is what you need to find. Anyway, yes, I'm a nerd. This is what I do.
Great. Well, Peter, thank you so much for walking us through all these different resources. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all these questions. I had a feeling, based on what Peter was going to do today, we were going to fall far short of getting to everyone's questions. So we're going to put all of these into Connect on our SEO thread. Give us, a couple of minutes to get that set up, and we'll get Peter and the 829 team involved there. So Peter, thank you very much. To all of our attendees, thank you all for joining us and for all the great questions. Lots more to come. Peter, I think we're going to have you back for advanced SEO, or 2 or 3. So again, thank you all very much, and we'll see you all soon at the next Arrival Online